Hello folks, hope you're doing well out there. Welcome back to the channel if you are a subscriber, and thank you for your continued support, especially as we race towards that 1,000 subscriber number. And also thank you very much to my Patreon subscribers. You're really helping out the channel. If you're brand new to the channel, hello, I hope you enjoy this video. Hope you find it useful and entertaining. If you do, you too can hit that subscribe button to receive updates on future videos, live streams that I do. Come and get involved and race online with us. And also, if you're feeling really generous, you can become a Patreon subscriber, and the link to that is in the description of this video. In this video, we are going to be looking at Assetto Corsa Composizione, a wonderful GT simulator by Kunos Simulations, and we're going to be specifically looking at how to transfer a setup from one track to another easily and simply, because it's something that the simulation doesn't make it immediately apparent of how to do. Hopefully this video will be very useful to new users of Assetto Corsa Composizione, but also you may be someone who's had the simulation for a while, but you may not be aware of this because it's kind of a bit of a hidden thing. Also, you have to kind of jump out of the game to do it. So before I go any further, I'm just going to show you how to do that, because what you need to do to be able to do this is be able to find your setups folder from within Windows. Now, I could shut down the game here and just go straight through Windows, but luckily with the way I have the game set up, I can easily Alt-Tab in and out of the game, or hit my Windows button. If you can't do that, you can always just shut the game down to do this. Anyway, I'm going to hit my Windows button now, and I'm going to open a file browser. There we are. And what you want to do is you want to come down to Documents, and in Documents you will find a folder called Assetto Corsa Composizione, of course. Double click on that, and at the bottom you should see your setups folder, and you can click on that and in there will be your setups. However, if I click on mine, you'll find it's completely empty because I've deliberately cleared it for the purposes of this video. So it's kind of like I've got a brand new install. If you've never saved a setup before, you won't have anything in there. I only put setups in there once you've saved them. Very important, that. Okay, so, and I'm going to go into why you might want to transfer one setup from one track to another a little bit later on, because you might be wondering why would you want to do that. I'll go into that a little bit later. Anyway, for the video, we're going to be using one car, and that's the Porsche 9912 GT3R, and we're going to be using two very different, well, different enough tracks. We're going to be using Silverstone and Zolder. Okay, so first of all, we're going to take the car to Silverstone. Now, if you're a current Assetto Corsa user and you've had it for a while, I'm sure you're very, very well aware that when you first get to a track, before you go out and drive, you can go into your setups folder, and unlike a lot of other sims where you'll just have the car with a baseline setup, kind of a one-size-fits-all setup at all tracks, which is the same, in Assetto Corsa they give you the option of having two preset setups that are specifically designed for that track. So one of those will be a safe preset, where it's tuned to the track for that car, but it's quite an easy setup to drive, maybe a little bit understeery, very stable. And then you'll have an aggressive preset, which will be, say, a little bit more oversteery, require a little bit more precise driving, maybe a little bit more unstable, but generally quite a bit faster. So you've got those, but here's the thing, and this is what's not made immediately apparent in Assetto Corsa Composizione, and why it might give you a little bit of a shock. Because what happens if you don't load either of those setups or create and save your own custom setup? What happens then? Right, so to show you how much of a shock this can give you, I'm just going to quickly do about half a lap of Silverstone here on the car's baseline setup, whatever that may be, but without loading any presets. And what you're going to find, I'm going to try and drive the car quite roughly, almost deliberately try and lose control of it, and you will find that it's extremely stable, very stable indeed. So here we go to Maggots and Beckett's coming in 6th gear. Now lifting off, hitting the brakes, turning in. And we've gone in a bit too fast, braked a bit too late. And we've not lost control of it, we've kept it on the track. As we go down the hanger straight here, I'm going to lift off and turn in and weave across the track. And there we go, the car's quite stable. Turning in for Stoke corner now, braking, coming in, hard on the throttle as we come out. Not driving precisely here, just driving roughly. What happens if I slow right down for these 2 tight corners, and in 2nd gear, I'm going to try and overpower the back end as I come out, see if I can spin the car. No, it's just understeering wide. There we go. Nice and easily under control. Brilliant. So you can see that car's very, very easy to control. I find the Porsche very, very easy to drive here. But what happens when we go to Zolder and do the same thing? Now, just before we do go to Zolder, I'm going to come back to the garage and go to setup and look at our current setup. Remember, we've not loaded any safe or aggressive preset. And we just quickly look at our setup, and I want you to take note of these settings. Have a look at your front splitter, which is here. It's on 0. If you have a look at your rear dampers, you've got 7, 5, 6 and 12 on your dampers there. And under mechanical grip, have a look at your rear anti-roll bar setting, which is on 2. And your preload differential, that is on 100 Newton meters. So take a note of that. Right, we're now going to come out, quit the track here, and we're going to go straight to Zolder and see what the car's like there. Isn't it lovely, by the way, that Assetto Corsa Composizione has such quick loading times for the track? Else this video would take a lot longer. But there we go, we're loaded already. Right, now here we are at Zolder. Now, the first time I tried this, years ago now, I remember I took the Porsche from Silverstone to Zolder and didn't load any kind of setup. And I went straight out expecting the car to be, or behave the same as it did at Silverstone. I got one hell of a shock. Okay, so without loading any setups, just going to go straight out.
Green light, give it all you can.
And once again, be a bit rough with the car. And very, very quickly, I think you're going to be able to see what I mean. So, coming up to the first 2 corners. Quite low speed corners. Down to 2nd. And look, I've just hit the throttle and the car's immediately stepped out at the back end there. Now I'm going to come into this corner at about 5th, down to 4th, braking. And, whoa! The back end's come straight out under braking there. And we actually nearly crashed. That's... I don't need to show you any more than that. You can see how much more unstable the car is here. Now, the first time I did this, I thought to myself, what's wrong with the car at Zolder? Or is it just the track? Is there just a lot less? Is there something different about the tarmac at Zolder? What is going on? And then I thought, well, no, the car's behaving completely differently. It's like a different car. Well, it is. Because what's not made apparent to you in Assetto Corsa Composizione is that without even loading one of your presets, if you come back here into setup and just go into your current setup, check these settings out. So the aero, the split is now at 1, whereas I think it was at 0 before. The dampers are now completely different, 7, 3, 8 and 4. The bottom value was at 12 at last time. And under mechanical grip, we've got a different anti-roll bar figure and a very different preload differential, which is what's making the main difference there, is that we've got a much looser differential at 60 Newton meters. So without you even loading a setup, it already has a completely different setup. It's practically a different car. And that's not made apparent to you immediately. So you might be wondering why the hell the car's handling so differently. So that is why. Now, if I want to now go to Silverstone and see exactly how different that is, if I wanted to do that, what I'd have to do is go in here, and because Assetto Corsa, when you save a setup, it will save it to that track, but no other track. So when you go into your load save down here, you will not see that setup at any other track for that car unless you take that car to the track you were at previously. So what you'd have to do is go through every single page, noting down, maybe jotting down on a piece of paper, screenshotting, taking pictures with your phone, all of those different setups or settings, and then you'd have to go to Silverstone and then adjust all of those values individually, and that is so time consuming. There's a very easy way of doing it. Now remember that our setup folder earlier on was empty. There were no setups for any track or any car in there. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to save the setup here at Zolder that the car is set up for here at Zolder. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to save it, and I'll save it under the name Zolder Baseline. Okay. Okay, now we've saved that, and we will now come out of here, and we're going to go now from this track to Silverstone. Now, as I said before, if you haven't got any setups saved at a certain track, you won't have a folder for it. So as the track's loading, I'm just going to open our setups folder again. So documents, Assetto Corsa Composizione, setups. You'll now see that there is a folder in there for the Porsche because I've saved a setup for it. And inside that folder, there is now a folder called Zolder because that's where I saved it. Okay. But there's no setup folder for Silverstone. So what I'm going to quickly do is we're going to go to setups and we're going to save our current setup, which is completely different for Silverstone than it was for Zolder. And we're going to save it as Silverstone Baseline. So there we go. Okay. Saved. Done. Now, if we open up our documents folder again, you'll now see that there is a folder in there for Silverstone as well. Okay, and that has our Silverstone Baseline set up in there. What we're going to do is we're going to go to Zolder. We're going to right click on our setup file there, which is a notepad file. We're going to copy that file, come back into Silverstone, and we're going to paste it in here. So there's our Zolder Baseline. And now if we come back into the game, click load save, there we go, there's our Zolder Baseline setup. So let's load that. That's now loaded, and you'll see at the top there it actually says Zolder Baseline setup, so we know we're on it. And we can prove that we're on it by going out and driving on it, because now
Green light. Go, go, go.
the car is going to act very differently to how we first drove it here at Silverstone. It's going to be a lot more unstable. There is no way in hell I'm going to be able to throw it around like I did on the original Silverstone setup. So, coming into Maggots and Beckett's. And I'm going to turn in, hit the brakes here. Whoa! There we go. Really violently came round there. So, yeah, as you can see, it's now acting much more like it was at Zolder. And if we drive down here to do the same thing we did last time, which is lift off and then swing the car left to right, I think we're going to get quite a violent reaction. Yes, immediately. Whoa, okay. Spinning completely. Nearly hitting the barriers. Nearly hitting the barriers. Not quite there. In fact, we've stalled the engine. So let's accelerate around Stowe Corner. Come up to these two little corners here where I tried to overpower the back end last time. Down to second. And can I overpower the back end coming out? Oh, yeah, I can. It's not understeering half as much as it was last time. And look at the state of our tyres. So, there you go. So that's how to easily transfer your setups from one track to another. Now, as I said earlier, I will go into why you might want to do that. But just to let you know, of course, that if you want to then, say, take your Zolder setup or your Silverstone setup to another track, say, for instance, Monza, before you can transfer it, you will have to save one setup at Monza, so there'll be a folder in there for you to... That folder will not appear in your documents unless you save a setup there, and then you can transfer your file. Now, why would you want to do that? Because obviously, it's best to have a setup tuned exactly for a certain track. That is true, but also, especially if you're just a casual driver, you know, you just want to jump in and drive. Setups are also there for... They're also there to suit your driving style. So if you're someone that likes a very understeery setup, you might want to always start off with your Silverstone baseline setup as a baseline, and then tweak it gradually a little bit more oversteery for, say, Zolder, but you don't want it exactly as oversteery as the original Zolder setup is, if that makes any sense at all, or vice versa. And this is not saying that there's anything wrong with the preloaded setups that are made for a setup called a Composizione. Even if you don't load one, it's a different setup for each track. But it might explain why you might get a shock when you first go to certain tracks. And if you get on with the Silverstone setup, or if you get on with the Zolder setup and you hate the Silverstone setup, you might want to start off with your Zolder setup as a baseline every time, just so you know when you first get in the car what's going to happen. Because no one likes nasty surprises, do they? Imagine if you were asleep one night and someone came round and went to your road car and swapped all your normal squishy road car suspension and changed it over for super hard racing dampers and shocks, and then the next day you went out to drive it normally, hit a few bumps and came off the road because you just weren't expecting the car to do that. You'd be a bit upset, wouldn't you? Anyway, that's how you easily transfer files. I hope I've explained that well, or I hope it's understandable, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, as I said earlier, you can hit subscribe, and I'll see you for future videos. Anyway, cheers all, happy sim racing.